Hello, we're back. I'm joined by Lee and Luke again, and this week we're looking at the best card in science fiction double feature. So this features the Shapeshifters, Super Spies, Time Travelers, and Cyborg Apes. And just a couple of quick things to note. So we've changed the structure from the core set faction or the core set tournament structure. So what we've done is we've each looked at all the factions individually first. We've ranked the cards that we think are the best three, and then we put the best two through that we've all agreed. And the best card in each faction is in the top of each tournament bracket. So the Mimic, Flying Monkey, the Base is Not Enough, and Time Walk. And then the second seed is playing against a different first seed. So we've got one of each card of each faction on the left-hand side of the screen, one card of each faction on the right-hand side of the screen, and the first seed is playing a different second seed. So we're not going to get any kind of clashes like we did in the core set where two Pirates cards played each other in the quarterfinals and things like that. So hopefully this tournament structure will be a little bit better and it'll work a bit clearer for everybody as well. And the second thing as well is we've not got any of the Titans on this tournament structure. What we've agreed is we're going to do a separate runoff for the Titans. So all the Titans that came in the Titan event kit, we're going to do its own tournament structure for that and get the best Titan card because it is its own separate expansion as well. So that's why you're not seeing any of the Titan cards up on the screen as well. So with that out of the way, if everyone's ready, we'll get started. So the first one is Mimic up against Secret Agent from the Super Spies. So talk about a difficult first round pairing. Who wants to kick us off on this?
I will go first.
Okay,
I pick the Mimic.
Well, there's a surprise.
I am shocked.
I'm a massive, as you two know from your reactions to that, I am a massive Shapeshifters fan. I play them a lot. I think they're extremely powerful, and I think a lot of that power comes from the Mimic. It has such a fantastic ability to be able to boost its own power, and because it's zero, it lets you search it out pretty easily with a lot of cards that let you search out. They're aiming at low powered minions, power 2s or less, that kind of thing. A lot of cards say power 2 or less. Okay, you are vulnerable to destruction for a brief moment, but as soon as you get to a high power, you go out of that limit. So you get to reap all the rewards of being under a 2 power minion until it's played, and then you reap all the rewards of being above 5 power. You can, what's the highest you can get? 7. So if you play a King Rex, there's a King Rex on the field, all of a sudden it's not so impressive. I think fairly easily it gets to 5, and I think that's ridiculously strong. Secret Agent is good. I do like Secret Agent. The 5 power is nice. I feel like the 5 power is almost a bit irrelevant because you almost want to put it on a base that isn't going to break, not use that power to break, and just use it for its ability. In which case, I'd probably rather have a base action. It's a good card. It's very pesky to get in the way of other people's game plan. You have to really make people think about what they're going to do and if they're going to do it. And people try and get rid of it as soon as you can, but you can break the base. You want it to stay out, and people want to use it to break the base. So the 5 power and its ability, for me, contradict each other a little bit. You're going to use its own power to break the base and get it off the field so that you can all carry on with the game and have a much more enjoyable evening without him there.
I like that. You summarised how I feel about that pretty clearly there, Luke. Actually, it's exactly right. The Secret Agent is a great card, but I always feel like it suffers from a lot of what some of the Power 5 suffer from, in so much as its action is so good that you want to keep it around. You don't want to play it to sort of blam it about, and that's where I think the Mimic kind of shines, because you're getting 4 of them. You want to play them hard to break bases, and like you say, it's an up to a power 7 minion. It's so easy to find and get out. It's so hard to get rid of when it's out because of the fact that it's usually taking the role of something like if someone's got a Secret Agent on a base somewhere, it would instantly pop up to a 5. So most cards won't really necessarily destroy it unless it's talking about face power. So yeah, to me, I think it's the Mimic as well.
I think you're slightly underplaying the power of the Mimic, because it can get to 10, can't it, with the King Minion from...
Oh, of course,
I can't remember what the King Minion's name is, but it's a 10.
Elder Thing from the was it the Elder Thing?
Elder Things, yeah. I can't remember what the name of it's called, but you can get to 10 with Mimic on that particular card.
Yeah, sorry. I sort of forget about those for a little while.
Yeah, I know they're not already a favourite of ours in particular. But I think for me this is a really tricky one, because I agree with what you've said about the Mimic, and the fact that it's a global effect as well. It's not just the highest Prince of Power on the base that you're playing it on, it's the highest Prince of Power in play. So across all the bases, especially in a 4-player game, you can very easily get to 4 or 5 power, because quite a lot of people lead with, if they've got a 4 power and a 2 power in the hand, they'll play the 4 power minion down first, especially if it's a better ability or it's a talent or something like that. They want to get as much value as they can, and then from that point onwards, your Mimic is live, and it's it's an unbelievably good card at that point, especially because it's that global effect. For me, I mean, Secret Agent is right up my kind of play style. I absolutely love those kind of effects, and really basically just pissing people off rather than actually progressing the game state. And I think that's where I have to admit Secret Agent probably falls down, because actually you're not really progressing your own board state with Secret Agent's ability. It's more an ability that just annoys other people, and it harms their game, not necessarily detrimentally, because they might just discard rubbish in their hand anyway, so you might not necessarily be harming them to a great extent, but you're not really progressing your own game. As much as I like the ability, I think the ability is absolutely amazing. It's such a unique ability as well. There's not really all that much stuff that can do it on an ongoing basis where everyone just has to discard a card every turn, because we've talked about it in the core set one, where actions are half the game and most people will play an action on their turn, so every time you have a turn you're basically discarding a card every time. So it's great ongoing value, but it doesn't really offer you anything proactive, and I think that's generally where Super Spies fall down, is that they're quite an antagonistical reaction based faction rather than necessarily progressing their own game state. And I think I'd have to give it to Mimic, just because of the global effect, the fact that you said it there, Luke. I mean, there's so much stuff that lets you search for minions of power 2 or less, especially from the deck, from the discard pile, extra plays from hand. The Mimic's always going to get value from that, so I think I'd have to give it to the Mimic. And I was going to say in the last video of Awesome Level 9000, but we haven't actually done that one yet. So, so yeah, I think I'd have to give it to the Mimic as well. As much as I like Secret Agent, I think it is a very good card.
Pairs really well with Vikings.
Oh, it pairs well with so much of those kind of really tricky factions, like Tricksters as well. Really good with Tricksters.
Yeah, if you're not in to win a game and you just want to annoy people, it's a great pairing to have.
Brilliant! It is so good, especially if you've got some kind of way of.
Don't do it.
If you can keep playing Secret Agent, if you can keep playing it like from the zombies from the discard pile, always have it in play.
Delightful.
But yeah, I think I have to give it to Mimic.
Nice. 3-0.
It's a good start. It's not often we all agree.
Next one's going to be a bit trickier though, I think. We've got Flying Monkey of the Cyborg Apes and Repeater Perfect from the Time Travelers. Not an easy pairing, this one.
This is hard. This is one of the first ones that I've properly looked at and gone, I want both of those cards to win. Normally, I've got some sort of affinity towards one or the other. Okay, so I think Flying Monkey is fantastic. I think the fact that you get to move a card that is loaded with, or potentially, especially if you're playing Cyborg Apes, that is loaded with other actions, that's loaded with other weapons and whatnot to another base after it is after a base is scored. It's basically trying to duplicate a card that should have done really well in the core set, the First Mate, but with actually good and useful cards rather than just whatever's been bumped onto it. Whereas the Repeater Perfect allows you to essentially get things like the Flying Monkey back out of the discard and keep sort of playing it, which is a really nice play down action to have. I can be convinced on either of these. I have a gut feeling. I almost want to keep it to myself for a second and wait to see what you guys have to say.
Okay, interesting. For me, I mean, just for those people who are watching, their benefit, the three cards, Cyborg Apes were the faction that we had the most difference on when we were picking our three strongest cards from the faction. And Flying Monkey didn't even make my list, so this is whereas Repeater Perfect did for Time Travelers. This is a really interesting one because Flying Monkey is one of those cards that in any faction, I think any faction would appreciate having Flying Monkey in their deck, and it's also really good in the Cyborg Apes faction. So it's one of the few Cyborg Apes cards that is actually good in the context of the wider game. You know, any faction would appreciate it, but also it's especially good in Cyborg Apes. Saying that though, I didn't even think it was one of the best three cards from Cyborg Apes. I would probably put Juiced Up or I can't remember what, even Cyberback I think I put ahead of Flying Monkey. Just because Flying Monkey is, I suppose it's what allows you to break two bases, but then it's not really the power card from Cyborg Apes. I'd say that's more the Juiced Up, which is the big finishing one where you get the +2 power for each action, including on Juiced Up. So Flying Monkey, I can see why you put it through, as we mentioned before in Core Set, in terms of the Dreamer card. It's the card that lets you build up that big minion and then break a base and then immediately flip to another base and try and break a second one. So I can see why you put that through. Whereas for me, I'm more of a consistency person, a consistency player. So I like draw and I like being able to replay the best cards in my faction. And obviously we've got it on the other side of the screen. Or Time Walk actually goes to the bottom of the deck anyway, so that's an irrelevant example. But actions can be some of the best cards in the game, and the fact that you can then take an action from your discard pile, put it to the top of the deck and play it again the next turn, it can be anything. It can be getting you a victory point, like Cosplay from the Geeks. It can be, you know, a really powerful draw card. It can be like your finishing move. It can even be Flying Monkey. It's that good an effect. So I'm kind of torn on this. I'm probably leaning more towards Repeater Perfect just because I like the fact that you can recurve some of your strongest cards, whereas Flying Monkey I think is one of those, again, it's one of those cards where it doesn't always come off, and okay, the times where it does come off and you move like a 18 power minion from one base to another, it feels great, but most of the time I suspect you're probably just moving a 4 power minion or maybe a 6 power minion or something from one base to another and you get decent value, but it's not a fantastic card. Whereas Repeater Perfect I feel is always going to give you, whenever you play it, you're always going to get good value from it. So I'm like 55-45, maybe 60-40 towards Repeater Perfect at this point.
I like Repeater Perfect. My vote is for Flying Monkey. I love the first mate, as you will know. You guys definitely know, and anyone watch the first video will know. I love the first mate. I am the smashed up dreamer that Mark refers to so often, and that's why I like Flying Monkey. The downside of Repeater Perfect for me, and I love getting the actions back, and you can have some fantastic actions, is twofold really. One, you have to have already played the action, it has to have already come out, and then you've already got to use it. And the second is it goes on top of your deck, which means when you draw for your next turn, you're getting one card plus the one you wanted. It's not going straight back to your hand. It's not like one of the zombie cards where you get an action out your discard pile, which for me are so much better than that is, because you're losing 50% of your draw in your turn. He's great. I think he's very good. But for me, Flying Monkey is the better of the two cards. It allows that big play, it allows a dream. It counts as an extra minion if you already played it, even if you haven't got any extra power on it. It's like having an extra minion play, because next turn, after that base is scored, you're playing two minions on the same base, or wherever you want. It might be a card that, okay, you don't want to go to the discard pile. It might have a talent that you want to keep around. It might be someone like the Secret Agent, where you've used its power to break the base, and then you've managed to keep its talent around still. There's so many reasons to keep cards on the field, particularly if you don't have any way to get them back out of your discard. And Flying Monkey might let you take a big power minion to another base and break that as well. It might help you keep your wizard around, or someone that you just don't want to go to the discard pile. You might not put it on the next base you want to score. It's got so much versatility because of how good some of the minions are. And Repeater Perfect is good because of how good some of the actions are, but I think Flying Monkey's better.
Can I just ask the two of you, why did you put Flying Monkey through and not Juiced Up, which is like the big finishing card for Cyborg Apes. It's the one where you get 2 power plus 2 power for every other action on the minion.
For me, it's because of how little play on minion actions exist in the game. I don't think there's enough of them, and they're in as many factions as outside the Cyborg Apes. There's enough of it to really keep it alive as a concept. I feel similar about base actions. The factions that have them sort of exist entirely on that, but they're a bit like experiments to me. Okay, how does this work? Does this concept of on minion actions work? A lot of the time, I'm not reaching for the Cyborg Apes to add on minion actions.
Never.
It's not really my style. Yeah, but I do think this card is good.
We've talked about our sort of play styles a little bit, and I know, Mark, you said tonight that you're more of the conservative, and we know that Luke's more of the dreamer. I honestly think I sit somewhere in between. I like to really think about it and then have that sort of, every now and again, that big blam game where I chuck a load of really great points down. To me, Flying Monkey is that card. It's kind of designed for me. It's better than Juiced Up in the ways that Luke's mentioned primarily, but mostly for me, Flying Monkey is 2 cards, because you get to replay whatever minion it is. You get to control what minion it goes on, when it goes down, how it's used, whether it's used as a recurrative, so keeping your best minion out, or whether it's used as a way of being able to break 2 bases instead of the 1. Juiced Up to me has got that 1 use, that primary use, that bang use, where it's gone down. It might have helped you win a base, and it's finished. But Flying Monkey, in my opinion, is more versatile, so it's a better card.
I think just on one of the points you made before, Luke, about comparison with one of the zombie cards, I think it's Grave Digging or Grave Robbing, where you get a card back from the discard pile and put it in your hand. That's an action to get a card, whereas this isn't as good because it puts it to the top of the deck. I mean, the top of the deck is still really good because you then immediately redraw them back into it at the end of your turn, but this comes with a 4-power minion attached to it, so it comes with that kind of big body. That's kind of why it's not necessarily as good as the zombie card is different, because it's an action to, you're not getting that kind of minion body attached to it, whereas obviously you get a big 4-power minion here, and it gives you that side effect of getting an action back.
What's the 4-power zombie minion? Does he get
Grave
something?
Digger.
Does he get
Grave Digger?
What does he get out of the discard?
He gets a minion from the discard back to the hand.
Okay.
Back to the hand.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that different to something like Mechanic. In that case, that's limited to being a base action, but anything that gets the action back to your hand, I think, is better, because you can get the action back to your hand and still get your 2 cards.
I feel the same. I think it's Flying Monkey for me for the same reasons. The fact that it doesn't go back into your hand, I think it limits it, but
Repeater Perfect can get you Flying Monkey. It's like
Flying Monkey can keep Repeater Perfect
on the field.
It's like the thing from The Simpsons where Mr. Burns gets the inspection from the Nuclear Safety Authority, and it's the mystery box or the washer and dryer where Smithers is standing. Like, Repeater Perfect can be your Flying Monkey, so it's like it can be anything. Repeater Perfect. That's the kind of versatility of the card. Anything you want a good action from your faction or your deck, you can have it back. It's just that good. You can play your best card again multiple times with both Repeater Perfects.
Something that seems to happen to me when I play Time Traveler is I'll get my Repeater Perfect early. And you could say the same thing about your Flying Monkey if you don't have a good minion to put it on, but Repeater Perfect, if he's the only minion in your hand and you've not got many good actions you want back out your discard pile early in the game, he has a lot less value than if you've already played your good actions and it's late in the game.
That's fair enough.
I think he's quite time sensitive.
Was that supposed to be a pun there on time?
It was supposed to be a joke, yeah, but nobody laughed. So
laughed on the inside, man.
Let's cut that bit out.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm on the Flying Monkey bandwagon. I've been convinced. Repeater Perfect's a good card. Flying Monkey, I think, in this instance, in this comparison, is better, and I don't think it really matters even slightly because neither of them are anywhere close to as good as the Mimic. So,
I agree.
I think spoilers.
I think I'm leaning more towards Flying Monkey, but I mean Luke's going to have a real problem in the next round when it comes up against two of his favourite cards against each other. So we'll see which way he goes on that one.
I think it's going to be a tough semis and final anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm going to struggle in the last four.
Yeah, the final four here is going to be certainly the hardest.
God, this could not be easier. It's nice to have a nice easy one in there, isn't it? Nice to chuck an easy one in.
Well, I'll start because I think I was the only one who put Monkey See, Monkey Do on our shortlist. I think Luke did eventually agree with me because I think we were going to put Cyberback through and then we decided against it. So
he was on my shortlist.
Yeah, I'll start on Monkey See, Monkey Do.
Not even top 5.
This is one of those. It's one of those cards that's actually been power crept as well. Russian Fairy Tales actually have a much better version of this card where you guarantee drawing 2 actions from the top of your deck. I think for me, the reason I put this through is it's card draw, and card draw is always good. And we mentioned before about consistency, and Cyborg Apes are so dependent on their player minion actions. The quicker you can get to those actions, the better. But then as well, this is transferable into other factions as well, because what faction wouldn't want to look at the top 5 cards of the deck and draw any actions that have been revealed? It's just a good draw effect. Maybe Robots is probably the only one that wouldn't want something like that just because of their minion concentration. And the chances are, even if you draw, I mean, you're probably going to draw, a 20 card faction, 10 minions, 10 actions, at least between 2 and 3 actions off this card, or draw 2 and 3 cards, maybe draw 2, which is a really good effect. To draw 2 cards is a very solid draw card, but it's not just 2 cards, it's 2 specific cards because you're drawing 2 actions. It's not just 2 random cards, it's 2 of a particular type of card, which is one of the reasons I thought this was particularly strong. However, saying that, it's an action, so you're already removing one of the potential cards you can draw when you play this card because you can't draw Monkey See, Monkey Do. If this was an ability on a minion, then it's a much better card because you then got the full range of actions you can actually draw from it, whereas you're playing an action to try and draw other actions, so you kind of removed one of the slots that you can draw from. Saying that, I think it's still a solid card, but I mean, there's just no competition here for me. It's always the base is not enough, and anyone who's seen the All-Star faction that I've created, this was a sure thing for one of the cards in that action because the strength of this card is just insane. The fact that you don't even need a minion played on a base to then steal a 4-power minion, it's an 8-power swing, 4 power from then to you. That can be enough to win you the base. But as I say, you don't even need a minion on the base, you just need this card in hand to guarantee points on any base in play. That's how strong this card is, and it's 4 or less as well, it's not like 3 or less. There's so many more minions that come into that 4 or less range, and particularly strong ones as well. So for me, it's always the base is not enough. The card is just insane. It guarantees you victory points, and we talked about it in the core set video that fundamentally that's the aim of the game, is to get victory points, and the base is not enough, just does that in spades. So it's an easy one, but I just wanted, I suppose, to provide some context as to why I put Monkey See, Monkey Do through. But as I say, it's been power crept by a card in Russian Fairy Tales. Fetch, I Know Not Want, is the card that's power crept it. But as I say, it's generally a good card in the faction and in any other faction.
I think if it had one extra line in there that said you may play an extra action, I think it might be a bit of a closer contest, but I think you're absolutely right. I have played against The Base Is Not Enough. Unfortunately, I was playing Geeks and I managed to know the card as it was played down. It prevented the stealing of one of my cards, and it would have meant that I'd have lost the game. And I think in the end I managed to win the game from a no action. But yeah, I think it's absolutely a fantastic card. It's an easy one of the best actions. I don't think there's anything like it. It's very unique. It's certainly one of the best actions within the game, in my opinion. So yeah, basically not enough. Easy for me.
Yeah, the other thing I've got to add is I think part of the strength of Monkey See, Monkey Do is it's threefold. Obviously, you get however many extractions between 0 and 5. But if you do pull some of the actions out of your deck, not only have you got those in your hand, you're also increasing the chance that you draw into your minions. So if you take 2 or 3 out of the top and you're left with, you're going to have fewer in your deck to draw, so you draw into them a bit quicker. And also you get to see what's coming out, so you can plan a little bit. So I think there are two other little bits, other than just getting the actions in your hand. There's a couple of other perks from that, but I agree, base is not enough.
Just on
that,
that,
8 point swing is too much.
Sorry, Luke, just on that, you don't even get to see what's coming out because you shuffle the other cards back in your deck.
Right.
So you don't get to put them back on.
Yeah.
But I think it's obviously this card came out in this expansion because the Super Spies give you the deck manipulation. So all the factions in an expansion are designed to kind of interplay with each other. So you kind of supposed to play it with Super Spies and manipulate your deck to put actions on the top of your deck, and then play Monkey See, Monkey Do for maximum value. That's kind of obviously what they were going with here, releasing it alongside Super Spies, and so that's kind of what they were going for. But I think it's unanimous here. It's the base is not enough. Is the far superior card? Yeah. Just had a notification pop up from Zoom. They're actually planning to end this meeting the first time that they're planning to do that. So we've got 8 minutes left. Is it worth just stopping now and then me doing another meeting and rejoining that one?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
We've ended up with you two have swapped positions.
That's annoying.
Let me. I can try and. Oh no, I've got it. It involves a couple of pins. I switched it back around. Okay. Cool. So.
I was going to change jumpers or something just in between.
Just for continuity.
Right, so next up we've got Time Walk up against Doppelganger. Two very big cards here.
Well, I guess it depends how big your size, doesn't it? Hey? No? No jokes tonight then. No jokes tonight, guys? We're not doing jokes tonight.
Tough crowd. Tough crowd.
I can subscribe.
Right, who wants to kick us off on this? Anyone want to say Doppelganger should go through?
I will do. I think it's fairly clear cut. I love Doppelganger. I think he's great. I think the uncapped power of him letting you play, not only play as an extra minion, but pull anyone out of your deck. Any card you want, no matter how big, no limitations, from your deck, which is fairly rare in this game to search your deck, I'd say. I think more often you're in your discard pile or drawing. Very rare to search your deck. Not only is it getting you an extra minion, it can get you any minion you want. And I think that is incredible. And it's after he's already done his job, after he's already scored a base and done what he needs to do, he'll let you get something else out. And I think that is fantastic. It's very strong within the minion, within the shapeshifters, and it's very strong full stop.
One of the best minions, I think. One of the best king minions that you can get.
I agree.
It's interesting because we've already talked tonight about Secret Agent, and we've talked about other king minions where actually what you want to do is keep them in play. Doppelganger's the opposite. You want to get it out on the base and get the base scored as quickly as possible, really, to try and get the best value from your extra minion play.
And I'll be honest with you, that's what I want the King Minion to do. I want him to have a load of power, to bring it all in, bang it down, win me a base, and then allow me to do something as a result of winning the base, or at least coming second on that base, and that's what I think Doppelganger allows you to do. But for me, it's got to be Time Warp. It's so powerful. It's so powerful.
It's an extra turn.
It is. It's a free turn.
Yeah, it is. It is very, very good.
Like literally from start to finish, drawing two cards as well. I mean, it's ridiculous. No wonder it goes to the bottom of your deck instead of your discard pile.
And depending on when you play it, that might be better to put it on the bottom of your deck than in the discard pile. Just because if your deck's fairly small already, then drawing back into Time Warp would be amazing. Whereas Doppelganger, the smaller your deck is, the worse Doppelganger gets because the targets are reduced.
True.
As good as Doppelganger is. It is limited by the fact that you want to get it out as quickly as possible onto a base as quickly as possible and get a few mimics down and try and break the base as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
And then Doppelganger is your best value.
The Time Walk, I think, works so well with another faction that allows you to deck manipulate something like Granny's, for example, where you can pick off the bottom, or you can sort out which is on the bottom, which is on the top. that's where I think Time Walk is even more powerful. But it's such a great standalone card.
Well, even
easily one of my favourite actions in the whole of the game.
Even in the Time Travelers, though, you've got the 3 power 3 minions that let you put a card to the bottom of the deck. If you do that every single turn, you can gradually push Time Walk back towards the top if you just keep adding stuff to the bottom. So you can kind of push it towards the top. But I completely agree. It's an absolutely absurd card in the fact that you draw 2, play an extra minion and play an extra action. I mean, how many cards have we seen where just one of those things is a card by itself? So like a Summon from Wizards where you get to play an extra minion, or Mystic Studies from Wizards where you draw 2 cards. I think they've even got a card that, or a Time Loop, for instance, where you can play 2 extra actions. That's 3 cards basically that they've effectively bundled into 1 card.
Yeah.
And whenever you bundle effects into 1 card, it makes it even stronger. So yeah, Time Walk's one of the strongest cards in the game. I have to put Time Walk through, even as good as Doppelganger is. It has to go to Time Walk. Happy with that, Luke?
Yeah. I feel like Doppelganger can win one of these brackets on any other day, but
you put it against
having an extra turn.
You put it against most of the other stuff, and I would probably argue in Doppelganger's favour for pretty much everything else we've talked about thus far. But Time Walk is just too good.
Yeah, I mean we had to select Time Walk, and at some point something is going to have to face Time Walk, and it inevitably will keep on going through unless something is better than it. So
Doppelganger would have next round up that side.
I know. Doppelganger would have had to have played it at some point, even if it was on another bracket. So
yeah, true.
It's sad to see it go, but
I agree.
I really like all the designs on the Shapeshifters cards. I think they're great.
The art on the cards.
Yeah, I think they're really good.
Yeah, there's some really nice art in this set actually.
Yeah, I quite like a lot of the Super Spies one, but that's just because I'm a big fan of James Bond, so there's a lot of references to it. Right, Luke, this seems to be your semi-final here, so which one do you want to see go through?
This is tough. I'm going to go for the Mimic, but the Flying Monkey is great. I love Flying Monkey. I really love it. But the fact that Mimic is 0 printed power works so well with every card that lets you do everything to low power minions. I just don't think you can beat that combination of being able to get all the other cards that think they're limiting you by only being able to get power 2 minions or less, or all those things. I think it's so strong to be able to search it out, get it back at your discard pile. Think of it with like Zombie Lord, just dropping it out and then immediately it goes to 5. They're both Dreamer cards. They are both smash up Dreamer cards, and that is difficult for me because I want 2 dreams. I want to dream twice. I want to play them together. I want to get Flying Monkey to keep my Mimics around to just mess with the game. But Mimic is the better card for me because of how easy it is to get in play, keep in play, put back in play. Okay, you're a little bit limited by if your opponent puts down a high power card or doesn't, should I say. But if they decide not to put down their power 5 minion to power up your Mimic, that's only going to benefit you because they're not adding the 5 and they're not getting whatever its ability or talent or whatever it is. So I think Mimic is better. I love the Flying Monkey action. I love First Mate. I love everything about that. But I think Mimic and having 3 of them and being able to get them out at will from most factions and it regularly having up to 4 power at least, if not 5, if not even more, is just too strong.
Do you think there's an element of Mimic though where it's out of your control and that you are kind of at the mercy of what your opponent decides to do and when they decide to do it?
I think so, but there's also you've got 2 power 5 minions, so you've got your own chance to make it a power 5. You can make it a 4 should you choose to fairly easily. You got at least 4 chances to do that. Plus, if you're playing a 2-3, if you're playing a 3 or 4 player game, they're going to want their strong minions out regularly. If they decide to not play that because you're going to get a powered up Mimic, I think that only works in your favour.
Completely.
I do think they have a bit more control over it than I would like. I don't like cards that your opponents can dictate or manipulate. I think you want as much in your own control as possible, but I think there's enough that you can control about these, because often you're choosing when to play them and what it's going to go to. Okay, if a base scores and a lot of cards disappear, he does go down, but it's still strong enough to be a really good card.
I think there are certain... The point where Mimic... It's tricky, because the point where Mimic struggles is when you get effects that can boost the power of cards. So obviously it's printed power, but where you get a card, for instance, that might be like 3 power but can boost itself up to like 7 power, and the Mimic can only get to 3. So I think it does struggle.
But you can boost Mimic as well, can't you?
Well, it's always equal to its printed power rather than the power that is increased by power counters, for instance.
Yeah, but can't it copy a 5 and then you add
you can
boost to Mimic?
You can add your own counters. What I'm saying though is that I think against certain pairings against it have a better time, because they can boost the power of their minions. So rather than play like the 5 power minion, for instance, they might play a 3 power minion and then decide just to buff the 3 power minion instead. So they can kind of get around the effect of Mimic, but arguably then it's Mimic making them do that, whereas they might not necessarily want it to do that.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the strength of it. But there are so many good plays with Mimic where, I mean, we did talk about one with Awesome Level 9000 still to come. So for instance, Kill Plants are really good with the Shapeshifters, because you can play your Venus Mantrap, get your Mimics out every turn, your Mimic becomes a 5 power guaranteed off the Venus Mantrap, and they've also got the 2 Weed Eater cards, which are printed power 5, but then they have -2 power the turn they come into play. So Mimic, they have 3 5 power minions basically to guarantee Mimic can hit something for 5 power. And then they've also got the card where you can play 3 copies of the same card, so you can drop 15 power basically with your Mimics. Teddy Bears as well, so Squeezes, where you can play extra minions up to printed power of 5, so you can just play 3 Mimics and so Squeezes for a 20 power drop in one play, which is unbelievably strong as well. I think it's a tricky one, because Flying Monkey is your big finish, but Mimic are your kind of guaranteed big-ish plays. They basically cheat you out extra king minions every game, so you effectively have 3 extra king minions in your faction. So I think for me I'd have to probably put Mimic through, just because of its more consistent power throughout the game, whereas Flying Monkey is a bit of a dream, and then also as well you're only guaranteeing yourself moving it onto one base and potentially trying to break 2 bases, which is strong, unarguably strong, but Mimic I think just gives you better power in the long run. You can arguably call Mimic a 5 power card.
I think it is, isn't it? Realistically, it spends most of its time as 5 power. Because there's usually a 5 power somewhere on the board. I mean, particularly with pairings that you kind of throw around with this, you normally hide a 5 power somewhere. Everyone's trying to hide a 5 power somewhere for something, and the Mimic's just using it to copy off. Yeah, I completely agree, for all the same reasons. Mimic's the better card.
And I think there are some, certainly when we played, princesses and superheroes are generally quite popular factions, so the Mimic kind of preys on popularity as well, so those particularly popular factions all have lots of 5 power minions, so the Mimic kind of really comes into its own against certain factions as well. As I say, princesses always seem to get picked, superheroes seem to get picked quite a lot as well. People just like playing with the superheroes, so Mimic's having a field day when you're playing against those factions. Nothing else you want to add, Luke, for Flying Monkey before we put it down?
I do like it. It's a great card. But it's time for it to go, I'm afraid. First mate didn't make it either, so I don't feel too bad.
Would you ever play Flying Monkey on a first mate?
I'd play it on the...
Dave would play a Flying Monkey on a first mate. Not really understanding the concept.
Microbot Alpha Flying Monkey.
It's uncanny. It's like you've been watching us play.
Where do we even begin with this?
Oh, it's so hard.
I know.
All right, I'll start. Okay, so the aim of the game is to score points. By scoring points, or to score points, you need to have lots of turns.
I thought you were going to say win lots of bases then. And I thought
bases not enough.
You could have gone either way.
See, and this is why I think this is a great pairing to argue with. I mean, both of these, this could easily be the final for me. Both of these cards are exceptional, but for me, it's just... I love the base is not enough. The fact that it's a special is wonderful, because actually that's a really powerful special to have. And like you said earlier on, Mark, it is your 8 power swing. It is, or potentially 8 power swing. You taking 4 off someone else and gaining 4 yourself until the end of that turn. So obviously, you play it when a base is scoring. You play it as a special to be able to win that over, to prevent anybody else from doing anything else. If it said printed power of 4 or less, I would be probably arguing for it to go through. The fact that it doesn't say that, usually speaking, you've got someone that's put a 4 down and bunged an extra 2 on it, or and even an extra 1 or something on it. Yeah, okay, you've got a lot of options in terms of what you can add on, but it's harder. Certainly in a 2 or a 3 player game, it's harder to find a standard base power 4 minion that you want to take, that's going to make a difference, or a minion that's going to make a difference. Otherwise, you're going to end up with something like a 2 or a 2 power minion, which might not necessarily make any difference at all. There's loads of specials or extras that you can play to power yourself up with 1 or 2 extra points. So for me, it's Time Walk all day, because it's an extra, it's a free turn. How can you not put the card that gives you a free turn through? It's not just it lets you play an extra minion and an extra action, which it does. It's that it also gives you 2 extra cards, so that when you've played Time Walk, you can have your next turn. It's ridiculous.
I mean,
Prove me wrong.
I know. I've already talked in this video about how I like consistency. So I was actually going to say the base is not enough is the card I would put through.
Interesting.
As good as Time Walk is, for me, there's only one better special in the game than the base is not enough, and that's Full Sail from the Pirates. And Full Sail is just a crazy strong card. That's on a power level of its own, as we saw in the last video. Whereas the base is not enough is a different kind of special, but it's also very, very strong. And the fact that there's very little... In fact, the only card... I can't think of anything else. The only card that can stop the base is not enough being played is in the Super Spies faction, which is the Mindraker, which stops specials being played. There's nothing your opponents can do about this. There is a guarantee that you will be able to take 4 power from them and add 4 power to you, and that can be enough to win a base. It can be enough to guarantee you points on a base. And as I say, it's in a faction that can maximise the use of it. So Super Spies, very good for their specials, so you can play your Mindraker down. You guarantee that no one else can affect it in Phase 3, which Phase 3 plays themselves are very strong. You can then play, I think it's like Live and Let Chum or something like that, where you can destroy a 3 power minion. You then play bases not enough to steal a 4 power minion. You've had a big swing there, and it can guarantee you those victory points. Whereas for me, Time Walk is very, very good, but the faction it's in isn't very, very good. And I think Time Walk really carries the faction. Time Walk is an amazing card. It's the strongest card in the faction, as we've all agreed. It would go into any other faction because it's just that good. But in Time Travelers, it's really very underwhelming, just because their extra minion plays and their extra actions aren't really that great. They're all just about bouncing stuff, and you need a good partner for those effects to really, maximise the value on them. And for me, Time Walk is it's a very strong card. It is that extra turn, but you really need to be maximising the extra minion, extra action, and the cards you're drawing into. And in the faction it's in, you're not really doing that. You're relying on your partner faction to carry this card. Whereas for me, the base is not enough is good in any faction, including in particular Super Spies, because they can really maximise the value of it. And it's just the stronger card for me. The base is not enough.
Comes down to Luke.
Okay. This is hard. My style is fitting with my game. Time Walk is my card. I like extra plays. I like doing as many things as you can. I know, Mark, your style is very much
sneaky.
The base is not enough.
Like a submarine.
it's the clever, but I like speed and I like putting minions down and I like doing as many things as fast as I can do them.
You don't like speed. You like to sit and watch a minion grow power over about 75 turns.
Yeah, as quickly as possible. But I really like both cards. For me, Time Walk doesn't really have a downside, and that's the difference here. The base is not enough. Downside is there may not be a powerful minion for it to steal. There may not be a minion that you can steal at all. In theory,
that's very, very unlikely to happen though.
Yeah,
it's power 4. It's power 4 or less, and most factions they only have one minion that's above power 4. So
but
it's very unlikely.
If you've put stuff down, there's going to be minions that you'd be able to take, but whether they're going to make a big enough difference to allow you to win might not necessarily be the case. The only downside I can actually see with Time Walk, and sorry to cut you off again, Luke, but the only downside I can actually see with Time Walk is it's such a good card that you might hold off playing it. So I think it's more obvious or easier perhaps to use the base is not enough than it is to use Time Walk, but I think what you get out of Time Walk is bigger.
I think. Sorry, go on. You finish, Luke, and I'll put my kind of counter to that after.
I think they both have fantastic upside, but for me, the base is not enough. Has just enough limitations that mean the perfect situation or the best situation or the situation to win the base or the situation to make the biggest difference may not be there. You've got the minion has to be power 4 or less. There's nothing. You could have a power 3 minion that's got some counters on it that you then can't steal. It might be too out of reach for you to win the base. There's enough about it that you might be sat there with that in your hand going, I can't quite play that, and it does enough. Or it might give you a lead on a base that's worth maybe 2 extra victory points. Yeah, there's just enough of a downside, just enough of limitations compared to the upside, and they both have fantastic upside to make Time Walk a better card for me. But it's very slight. It is very slight.
I think I suppose what I would counter with is that the base is not enough has a more tangible outcome than Time Walk. The base is not enough guarantees, and very, very rare circumstances where you can't guarantee, but it guarantees you victory points. You always know when you play the base is not enough that you're going to get either at least 1 victory point, if not more. Whereas Time Walk, when you play Time Walk, you'll draw 2 cards, you can play your extra minion, extra action. But as I say, in the faction it's in, that's not necessarily an amazing outcome. There's no guaranteed outcome there, especially when you play it early game. It's just really a consistency card, and consistency cards are great, don't get me wrong, I think Time Walk is amazing, but there's not necessarily that guaranteed tangible outcome, whereas unlike the base is not enough where you can guarantee that you will get at least 1 victory point every time you play the base is not enough.
I don't know if you can guarantee it. I think, maybe you can guarantee 1 victory point when it comes down to playing it, but I don't think you can guarantee that you're going to win the base. And I think with Time Walk I think you've got more opportunity to do that. I think if you're talking about the best case scenario for the base is not enough, you're taking a 4 power minion. With the best case scenario for Time Walk is that you're playing down an extra 5 power minion and a power card that allows them to boost them by 4 power till the end of the turn. You're talking about a power swing there of a significantly higher increase than the 4 that you're going to gain from somebody else. The difference being that, of course, you can manipulate who it is that you're taking that power from. But I agree that the base is not enough. It's an exceptional card. I just think Time Walk is the best of the two.
Counterpoint to you, Mark. I feel like Smash Up is a game where there's a point where 2 or maybe 3 of you are getting very close to winning, and you might be 1 turn ahead, 1 turn behind. And I think getting that extra turn ahead can make it, no matter at what point it is in the game, there's a nice culmination where, okay, the next person to do this, the next person to break this base, the next person to do this thing is going to win. And I think getting 1 extra turn ahead of everybody can make that difference.
Although the counterpoint to that counterpoint, is that the base is not enough.
It's like Inception.
It allows you to catch up. So the base is not enough. You can literally just ignore a base and let one person solo a base. Let's just say a 5-3-2 base. You can let them solo it, knowing that the base is not enough in hand guarantees you second place for 3 victory points. So you can afford to be behind on a base, or you can afford to let someone do what they want on a base, spend all their resources to try and break it, and then you just drop the one card. Okay, I'll have second place, please, thank you very much. And then you can get 2 victory points, 3 victory points, 1 victory point on particularly bad bases, but that can be enough to win you the game. You could be concentrating on something else, you could be like 1 point behind maybe, or something like that, or you could be 1 point ahead. They can go 1 point ahead of you, but then you can go 1 point ahead of them again with the second place points and win the game off it. So there is always a good outcome, or there's always that tangible, attributable outcome to the base is not enough, where you can guarantee, you can see the outcome of the base is not enough, you can see how good the card actually is. Whereas I think for Time Walk, as I say, as good as it is and its consistency, every faction would love Time Walk in their deck. It's not necessarily the thing that you can see as won you the game, I suppose. It's very dependent on what you draw into and what you already have in hand for it to be maximum value. And as Tank was saying earlier about, or as Lee was saying earlier about the, you might hold on to it until you've got a good time to play it. I suppose that can be its limitation there, in that you wouldn't necessarily play Time Walk until you've got that really good extra minion, extra action play in hand.
Invader, pick up. Time Walk, bottom of the deck. Bottom of the deck, 3 cards away. Draw 2 cards for turn. Shuffle it in. Invader, pick up. 4 points. Done. Win. Talking about best case scenarios, then that's what you've got, right?
Yeah. A fifth counterpoint, if you will. There are limited opportunities to play. The base is not enough. There are regular, frequent. The limitation of Time Walk, if you don't have a good extra minion and extra action, okay, fine. But you have every single turn that you play throughout the game to play that card. The base is not enough. You have however many bases break during the game. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Depending on how many players you've got, you have, and you're not going to want to play at each opportunity. So I think you've got fewer choices.
You're still waiting, aren't you? You're right, Luke. You're still waiting to find that opportunity where it's going to have the maximum impact. And I think you can even still, I know we said about Time Walk that you might hold on to it for a bit longer, but the base is not enough. You could potentially not play it down when you needed to, and you could miss the best opportunity. So I guess it's dependent on the player, really, isn't it? But I think either of these cards can go through. I know my personal preference is with Time Walk, and I don't think you're going to change my mind on that.
No, that's fair enough. We'll put Time Walk through, but I wanted to give a fair case for the base is not enough, because it's such a good card.
It is 55-45%.
Oh, it's close.
Yeah.
It's close, but I think it's close, but I think that's fairly cemented, and I don't think it's ever going to change. If I was picking an action to go into any deck at all, it would be Time Walk would be the first action I would pick from pretty much the entire game.
Yeah, I completely agree. That I put it.
I agree. Terraforming. Yeah, I agree with Terraforming. I mean, Terraforming first, then.
Terraforming.
Yeah.
That's one of the decisions I had was. Building a singleton faction, do you pick Invader or do you pick Terraforming? That was the difficult decision. I ultimately went down the line of Invader just because I thought Invader was better.
That's what we've proved. We've already proved that that's true. So
it's the best card in the core set.
The best card in the core set.
So
bet any of those silly Pirates cards.
The final.
Here we go.
This is a good one. This is probably the best final we've had.
You think? I think this Full Sail v Invader was probably a better final than this.
Yeah, that was good. I think this is the difficulty here is that I love both of these cards. I love the art on both of these cards. I love the play in both of these cards, and I think Mimic might be in my top, maybe even top 3 favorite minions in the whole game. So it's tough. Someone else can start. I was just talking.
What else is quite nice I've just noticed about the art is that Time Walk and the base is not enough both contain all 4 minions.
Yeah.
Anyway, I vote for Mimic. and I've probably gone through all my reasons by now of why Mimic is so good. And you guys really have just added to that. The big plays where you're dropping 5s down, you're dropping Mimics as 5s, you're pulling whatever you want out and dropping them, and you may as well, like Matt said, count it as a 5-power minion. And when you can add 3 extra 5-power minions into your deck, you can't beat that. You just can't beat that. And I like an extra turn, don't get me wrong. I really love Time Walk. It's fantastic. It is the second action I would pick to go in any deck after Terraforming. But you just can't beat the Mimic for me. It's too strong. It's too much power. It's got a big fat 0 in for searching it out, for getting it back out, for playing it as long as you want. Anyone who doesn't give the Mimic the time of day and doesn't try and destroy it as soon as they possibly can, or do whatever they can to not let you roll them into 5s and break multiple paces with 20 power, 25 power, isn't going to win the game. And for me, the winner is Mimic.
That's interesting because for me, the final was the last round, really. I'm obviously coming off the back of a disappointment for the basis of not going through, but
you lost on penalties in the last round.
Yeah, so for me, Time Walk is the. If Time Walk can beat the basis not enough, Time Walk for me should be winning this hands down. And I think I couldn't not see Time Walk win this now, just because we talked about consistency and having extra turn, especially in a game where you may only have 10 turns, to then increase your advantage by having that extra turn, 10% or whatever it might be, is so good, and it's such a good consistency card. Drawing the 2 cards, extra minion, extra action, that I think I would have to see Time Walk go through. I mean, one of the counterpoints I suppose to Mimic that we haven't mentioned is there are some counters to the fact that it has 0 power. There are some bases, I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but there are certain cards that prevent minions of certain power being played on either bases or played on bases. So it's typically restricted to like 2 or less and things like that. So that might actually hurt Mimic. Whereas having a normal printed, like if it had 2 or 3 printed power and then said increases it to the highest printed power in play, that would be better, I think. Although, granted, having 0 power does give it advantages in other situations where you're searching the deck and discard power for minions of 2 or less. But I just wanted to point that out there, that it has 0 power can be a disadvantage as well. But as I say, I think for me,
there's also a lot of bases that have benefits for playing minions of power 2 or less as well. But yeah, I agree, there are some downsides to that.
Yeah, but I think, as I say, for me, I would probably say Time Walk is the better card here. If I was to pick one card that had to go in my faction of these 2, I think I would put Time Walk in every day, because Time Walk is just such a good standalone card. Granted, there are 3 Mimics, and as you say, whenever you play a Mimic, it's almost certainly going to be at least 3 power, which is the slot it's supposed to be in, if not 4 or even 5. So you are getting that extra value. But then if you think about that, so for instance, Ronin from Samurai is a 3 power minion that when you play it on a base where it's your only minion, you gain a power counter. So you're playing Ronin as a 4 power minion when it's actually 3. Same in Mad Scientist, Lab Assistant, you play it as a 3 power minion, you can put a power counter on another minion, so you're playing it as a 4 power counter minion. So how much better is Mimic than those cards, for instance? Mimic, if you think of Mimic as a 3 power minion, as it's supposed to be, and it said, rather than its talent, rather than its ability, it just said, when you play this minion, gain a power counter, every now and again gain 2 power counters. How good would you really think it is at that point? I suppose I'm just trying to I suppose, bring the...
You're trying to put it in context,
yeah,
I think, and that's...
Because it's supposed to be a 3 power minion, and the fact that it may as well have written on it gain a power counter or occasionally gain 2 power counters, that's not that great, actually. It's got quite an underwhelming ability.
Listening to you talk is always really interesting, Mark, because it's always so good at backing up an argument. The thing is, I think, so I was kind of 50-50, I think, on this discussion, and I just kind of had to sit and think about what both of you have kind of said. And I think It's going to come down to me too. The fact that okay, you've got 3 mimics in the deck. Why have you not got more than one Time Warp? Because it's the best card. End of.
Okay, let's go.
You don't want to put a counter on that, Luke, because you're obviously more in favour of Mimic, yeah.
Yeah, I think the fact that there's 3 works in its advantage because you've got 3 times the amount of chance to play it. Time Walk.
It's interesting you say that. Interesting you say that. What does Time Walk let you do? Play an extra minion. How many mimics are you going to play down with Time Walk? 2. Give me Time Walk.
Yeah, but
I think it's such a close thing. But I think when it comes down to it, the stronger action is better than the stronger minion, and that's one of the themes I think I've seen emerging out of what we've been discussing over the last couple of these things. I think the strength of the action is where the minions are going to draw the strength from. It would need to be a super powerful minion to be able to sway me over Time Walk. Because I think it's just such an overpowered and ridiculous action. So to me, I think it's Time Walk.
I think
I think it's fantastic as a card. I think it being in Time Travelers lets it down because, like Mark said, it doesn't have a lot of good cards to use with it.
Yeah. Except you play it with another set. You don't ever play it solo.
And whereas Mimic fits well into anything because every faction.
So does Time Walk.
Give or take. Yeah, but you've got to have all the other cards as well.
So Mimic on its own is a 0. You need other cards to make Mimic better.
Yeah,
that's true.
Mimicking shapeshifters, 3 mimics and shapeshifters is better than Time Walking Time Travelers. Shapeshifters are better than Time Travelers in general. So Mimic being, when you mix it with the other faction, you're not really just playing it to pick up aliens. And Time Walk, does fit into everything because everyone wants an extra turn. But Mimic meshes well with anything that you're pairing it with because of all the other cards as well as it works so well with that faction.
I don't disagree.
Time Walk is a standalone card in a
I think
pretty average faction. It is a fantastic card on its own in isolation, but Mimic does more with the faction. It's more of the focal point of the faction. A lot of the actions in there let you destroy stuff and go and search stuff out and get it and use it. But it works well with not only every card in your faction, every power 5 that you've got, every power 5 that everyone else has got.
2 extra points, I suppose. 1 for Mimic, 1 for Time Walk. I know what you're saying about Mimic being particularly good in Shapeshifters. I can't remember the exact text on Copycat, the Power 2 minion, but Copycat can let you copy an ability of any minion in play. I think it's any minion rather than just your opponent's minions. So actually you can play Copycat down as extra mimics. So for instance, you can play 3 mimics down 5 power each, let's say. You can then play a Copycat to copy the mimic's ability to then play your Copycat down for 5 power as well. So that kind of synergy within the faction is also really good because Copycat, even if there's not any great abilities to copy and play from your opponents, you've always got Mimic that you can then copy. However, for me, I mentioned this in Time Walk's earlier rounds, but you've got cards that are printed cards in Smash Up, so things like Summon, Mystic Studies, Time Loop, which are all good enough to be printed as their own card. And then you've got a card that bundles all of those effects in together. So you've got a card that's, as I say, Summon is a good enough card to print by itself, play an extra minion. You know, you'd be happy to see that in lots of games. When you've got Time Warp, which bundles them together, it makes it so much stronger. So you've got a card there that is as good as 3 cards that have been printed in Smash Up individually. That's how good this card is. So I would, as I say, I would give it to Time Walk. But I think Mimic is strong. But for me, Time Walk is just a great consistency card. It's such a strong card because it bundles so many effects in together. And even the going to the bottom of the discard pile, bottom of the deck isn't necessarily a huge downside, especially if you play this in the late game. You can get Time Warp back in a couple of turns' time. So it's a very, very strong card, and I'd give it to Time Warp.
It's funny how now that it's not against the base is not enough, it's a consistent card, even when 10 minutes ago it was an inconsistent card.
Time Walk in the last round was garbage. Absolutely garbage. I would have happily seen Time Walk drop out at that point, but, it knocked out my favourite, or my personal strongest card, so it has to be... It's one of those things by association. If it knocks out the strongest card, then it's got to be the strongest card. So I'm putting it for Time Walk.
I think they knew what they were doing when they put Time Walk into the Time Travelers. And I think it could be very dangerous in another faction, but I think they went, the faction's only okay, let's shut this in. It's a nice little concept and it just beeps it up a bit. And I think it's a great card. I love both these cards, don't get me wrong. I'm happy for either of these to win. I just thought I'd put my flag in the...
A question for the two of you. If Time Walk wasn't printed, would the Time Travelers be the worst faction in Smash Up?
No. Oh.
There's a few...
Does this card just hard carry Time Travelers?
Innsmouth.
True, I suppose.
In fact, any of the madness dealing factions, they're all awful. Apart from Miskatonic. Miskatonic I can get away with.
I think... I don't know. I still think there are some good cards in the Time Travelers. It's just not enough good cards. Repeated Perfect's good. It's Astounding's good. There are some good cards in there.
Yeah,
I think there's some other factions that just don't have any good cards.
They're a pair faction. To me, the Time Travelers are a good pair faction because they've got a lot of things that allow the rest of your game to get better, but they don't have a great deal of it themselves in their own faction. But as I said earlier on, you play Smash Up with two factions, so they're a really good pair faction.
Yeah, they're a decent support faction. And a card we haven't mentioned that made the shortlist was Stasis Field, which is a very interesting card in Time Travelers, which is very unique, stopping a base from scoring entirely. I don't think there's anything like that. So that is a strong card, but then ultimately if your faction is very weak, you're stopping the base from scoring, but what can you really do the following turn? So it's a very good card, but as you say, it's Time Travelers are dependent on their partner faction.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
Are we calling it for Time Walk?
I would. I'm quite interested to play Shapeshifters with Time Travelers now and see what happens.
Okay. Why are you saying that?
I just think it'd be interesting. We've talked about both of them so much. I think Time Travelers is weak, Shapeshifters is strong. I'd like to see if they go together.
Do we think that's a worthy winner?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Can't argue anymore.
What's highlighted in this video for me is that the Cyborg Apes, I think, are quite weak in terms of having individually strong cards for this sort of exercise, but as a faction I think they're quite good. But on this, I think certainly when choosing the cards, the other three factions had much stronger individual cards than Cyborg Apes.
There's something about concentrating. So your power's on your you've got your printed power on your minions, then you've got your resources, your actions on top of your minions. There's something that's a bit too concentrated on that for me. I think it works with the sharks and the werewolves and some of those others that have play on minion actions, but I think it's too focused on play on minion actions. And minion actions, when you lose your minion, you lose your action. You're losing both the things at the same time. I think that just hurts it a bit too much.
I've never really played them with anything and gone, "Ooh, that was a really great combination. I feel really good about playing that." I'm usually left feeling a bit deflated, thinking, "God, that should have done better." Especially when you think about some of the other play on minion actions factions that are out there, like the Musketeers, for example, like the Astro Knights, that do what the Cyborg Apes, I think, are supposed to do, but better.
Yeah, and people often say that the Pirates are a really good partner for Cyborg Apes just because of buffing the first mate, but the problem with that is that Cyborg Ape minions all really, apart from the Power 4, the Power 2, 3 and 5 all really want to be the target for you playing minion actions, not the first
exactly.
mate. They're all so good when you play extra actions on them, and they all want extra actions being played on them, that if you play them with the pirates, and you put all the stuff on the first mate, you're taking a lot of what makes the Cyborg Apes good away. They're really just there for their actions. The minions themselves are very underwhelming.
And that's interesting, and I think that's where these guys differ in this whole set, because I think the Shapeshifters are a good standalone. They're a great standalone faction, to be perfectly honest, but they pair really well with loads of other factions. The Time Travelers are a pretty poor standalone faction, but they pair exceptionally well with loads of other factions. Same with Spies, whereas the Flying Monkeys, I think it's almost like they're designed to work with really only themselves, and they only really detract from themselves when they are paired with other factions. Like you've just said there, Mark, you're not a case of using some of their great play on minion actions to make other minions better, because if you don't use them on the monkeys, they're crap.
Yeah.
And I can say crap because crap isn't a swear word.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. But yeah, I completely agree, and I think that was I think we've got a worthy winner there. I think if you're thinking about this expansion, Time Walk is definitely probably the first card you think of as like a real standout power card, even if it is in a very weak faction.
This expansion is worth buying just to play Shapeshifters. If you don't have this faction, you're playing Core Set and you're looking for an expansion to get, this is a great one to get just to play Shapeshifters.
Well, I think
Spies.
I think they've got I think this faction has some of the most interesting cards. So
I agree.
Some of the ones that didn't make the slide, like Mindraker for Super Spies,
the
Power Form, the Mold for Super Spies, Stasis Field for Time Travelers. They've got some really interesting abilities.
Yeah.
Gelf again.
Love Gelf.
Really interesting abilities in this expansion. I think this is certainly one of my favourite expansions. Probably not my favourite, but it's up there. It's a very good expansion to get for the game.
Which one are we doing next?
Yeah, which one are we doing next? Well, shall we wrap up this one and then do that one off video? Okay, so
are we asking the comment section? Are we asking the comment section to ask us
which one do you want next?
Well, we can do that. We can do that, I suppose. But we're probably going to decide it anyway after this video, so it probably won't.
True. I've been enjoying reading the comments on the last couple of videos, though, guys. Keep them coming.
Yeah, they've been good. It's been good to hear what people have to say about it and see what they think. Most often, it's people will say, "Why didn't this make the list?" or "I would have chosen this one instead of that one." But then ultimately, they might say, "Well, actually, none of them are as good as the one that won anyway." So it doesn't really matter if it's not as good anyway.
And it's quite nice because you tried to put a little bit of that in the discussion that we've been having tonight as well, in terms of this one was on our list. This one was on our. We talked about this one, so it's been nice that we've been able to have that discussion. But like you say, I think the deserved winner is Time Walk, and I think it was.
I like the way that we did that with each of us looking at each faction.
The way that we
picking ranking three cards, and then coming together and seeing which ones crossed across the list.
And for a bit of background on this one, 3 of the factions we had the same top 2. Yeah, it was in a slightly different order, but on everything but Cyborg Apes, we had the same number 1 and number 2, and we almost all had a different third. Where Cyborg Apes was a bit more of a mix, but it felt fairly clear cut on a little group of 3. Which one was the best? Which one was the best top 2?
Yeah. Yeah, and as I say, I think it just comes down to Cyborg Apes being a good faction by themselves, but then not necessarily having standout strong individual cards, and then also not necessarily having cards that translate well across into other factions. So I think we're probably wrapping this one up then. So thank you very much for joining me and giving me your time right before Christmas as well. It's nice to see a couple of us getting very festive, if not Luke. But
wait.
Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you very much for everyone watching. And we got the Christmas jumper there for seeing us.
Careful if you're epileptic. Spoiler warning.
It's going to be demonetized now, Lee, because of that. Anyway, yeah, thank you very much for joining us. That was really good.
Always lovely to chat, guys.
And have a nice Christmas, and we'll be back with another one of these after Christmas.
Absolutely.
Merry Christmas.